We also agreed to establish a fund in the future that for countries can draw on to help prevent, if necessary, and respond to the next pandemic, prepared for the next time around. Yesterday, together with Prime Minister Johnson and Merkel and Macron, President Macron, we came together to reiterate our shared belief that diplomacy is the best way to prevent Iran from gaining a nuclear weapon, and we discussed how best to encourage Iran to resume serious good faith negotiations. And I also want to note that even as I've been here in Rome, as you might guess, and some of you I suspect doing the same thing, American reporters, been focused on the vital issues that affect American workers and families at home. I just finished meeting with a broad coalition of partners on how to address the immediate supply chain backlogs and dealing that the world's been dealing with and facing. And we're facing back at home, and how to make sure we have access to all the products we need, from shoes to furniture to electronics to automobiles, to make sure that we talk about how better to secure ourselves against these future shocks, whether pandemic, climate change, or other disasters. And the Build Back Better framework, which is, God willing, going to be voted on as early as sometime this coming week, that I announced on Thursday, includes, for the first time ever, several billion dollars to help strengthen the supply chains to make sure we have access to everything we need. And it's going to give workers and folks making all these products just a little bit of breathing room. The Build Back Better will also going to make it easier for them to afford everything from child care while they are at work for their kids, 2 years of free high-quality preschool.
Latest news, Iran. Iran says it blocks U.S. attempt to confiscate oil in the Sea of Oman, and Iran warns nuclear talks would fail unless Biden provides guarantees. This is the latest news involving the United States and Iran. Reuters headliner, Iran says it blocks U.S. attempt to confiscate oil in the Sea of Oman, dated November 3rd, 2021. Iran's Revolutionary Guard said on Wednesday they thwarted an attempt by the United States to detain a tanker carrying the Islamic Republic's oil in the Sea of Oman. U.S. officials speaking on conditions of anonymity said that the Iranian report was not true, that there had been no American attempt to seize a tanker. The American officials said that in reality, Iranian forces had seized a Vietnamese flagged oil tanker last month, and U.S. naval forces were just monitoring the situation. With the timely and authoritative action of the Guard's naval forces, the U.S. terrorist Navy's operation to steal Iranian oil in the Sea of Oman failed, the elite Guard said in a statement published by state media. Iran has reportedly warned the United States about its military activities in the Gulf, saying that the Guard's naval forces have increased patrols to also secure the passage of Iranian ships and combat fuel smuggling. Giving details of the reported incident, Press TV said the Guards had reached promptly when the Iranian oil tanker was detained in the Sea of Oman. Press TV would go on to say, members of the Guards naval forces carried out a hellborn operation on the detained tanker's deck, gained control of the vessel and directed it back toward Iran's territorial waters. Separately, American officials told Reuters that multiple drones believed to be Iranian had come close to the U.S. Navy amphibious assault ship, the Essex, in the Straits of Hormuz in the past 24 hours. Tensions have risen between Tehran and Washington amid stalled talks on reviving Iran's 2015 nuclear deal with world powers, under which Tehran curtailed its uranium enrichment program in exchange for a lifting of global sanctions. Iran's top security official, Ali Shamkhan, said on Wednesday the talks would fail unless President Biden could guarantee Washington would not engage on the nuclear agreement in the future. The deal has eroded since 2018, when then President Donald Trump withdrew the United States from it and reimposed U.S. sanctions on Iran, prompting Tehran to breach various limits on uranium enrichment set by the pact. Shamkhan tweeted, the U.S. president, lacking authority, is not ready to give guarantees. If the current status quo continues, the result of negotiations is clear. Jerusalem Post headliner, Iran warns nuclear talks would fail unless Biden provides guarantees, dated November 3rd, 2021. Negotiations to revive Iran's 2015 nuclear agreement with world powers will fail unless President Biden can guarantee that Washington will not again abandon the pact. Iran is expected to give an exact date this weekend for the resumption of talks with the world powers, scheduled for the end of November, according to Iranian top nuclear negotiator Ali Bagheri Khani. In April, Iran and 6 powers started talks in Vienna to reinstate the deal, which then U.S. President Donald Trump ditched 3 years before, reimposing sanctions that have crippled Iran's economy. However, the talks were put on hold after Iran's presidential election in June that brought anti-Western hardliner Ibrahim Raisi to power. One main disagreement in Vienna has been over Iran's requirement for the United States to give guarantees that it would not renege on the nuclear agreement in the future. The United States and European powers have urged Iran to return to negotiations, warning that time is running out as the Islamic Republic's uranium enrichment program is advancing well beyond the limits of the nuclear pact. In reaction to Trump's reimposition of sanctions, Tehran breached the deal by rebuilding stockpiles of enriched uranium, refining it to higher fissile purity, and installing advanced centrifuges to speed up output. That's the latest news between Iran and the United States. Now, my thoughts on the matter. The deal seems to be centered on the nuclear program of Iran, in which I have mentioned previously has been working on the enrichment program for energy purposes. And this is coming from the International Atomic Energy Agency report between 2007 and 2015. For example, on July 30th, 2007, IAEA inspectors spent 5 hours at the Arak complex, the first such visit since April of that year, and visits to other plants in Iran were expected during the following days. It has been suggested that access may have been granted in an attempt to head off further sanctions. The report to the Board of Governors on August 30, 2000 stated that Iran's fuel enrichment plant at Natanz was operating well below the expected quantity for a facility of this design. The report stated that the IAEA had been able to verify the non-diversion of the declared nuclear materials at the enrichment facilities in Iran, and that longstanding issues regarding plutonium experiments and the HEU contamination on spent fuel containers were considered resolved. The report also outlined a work plan agreed by Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency on August 21st, 2007. And again, in 2008, the same news report stated that the IAEA report on Iran's compliance with the August 2007 work plan would be delayed over internal agreements over the report's expected conclusions that the major issues have been resolved. And they issued a report on the implementation of safeguards in Iran, stated that we have managed to clarify all the remaining outstanding issues. And at the end of the report, it stated that the IAEA has not detected the use of nuclear material in connection with the alleged studies, nor does it have credible information in this regard. They've been under reports and under inspections almost every single year. And even if we were to fast forward to 2015, the IAEA reported that the agency also assesses that these activities did not advance beyond feasibility non-scientific studies. The agency has no credible indications of activities in Iran relevant to the development of a nuclear explosive device after 2009. Yet you would think that the United States, along with the Gulf, headed by Saudi Arabia and Israel, would know that these reports are unprejudicial, are not prejudicial, or not biased in any way. These are actual findings that they're not building nuclear weapons, that they're conducting within the parameters of the report and within the confines of the global powers like France and Germany, Canada, that they're not building nuclear weapons here. Their enrichment program is for energetic purposes. It just seems to me that the real instigators are the United States themselves. Now, whether the report about seizing an oil tanker is true or not, we'll have to wait till more comes out. But as of right now, it just seems that this is more a tit for tat, who to believe and who do not. Well, now it comes down to which side is telling the less amount of lies. It's not Iran that's antagonizing Israel. It's not Iran that's antagonizing the Gulf. It's not Iran antagonizing the United States. The United States, I think, approximately has 36 military outposts surrounding Iran. Could be a little bit more. The problem starts with the lack of cohesive and reasonable dialogue when you have a number of people who have a vested interest, not for peace and not for the United States and not for the Iranians, but for military industrial contractors, for the Pentagon, for the foreign lobbyists. These are the enemies of dialogue, because it's not them that are going to be on the front lines. It's going to be our sons and daughters, those who have children, as well as the Iranian people. Change doesn't come through bombs and bullets. It only comes when we have reasonable people at the table.